welcome everybody to Hatch Ideas business breakfast session, which is now no longer being held at breakfast time. So we're thinking we're going to have to change the name, especially now that we have people joining us from all over the world. It's not breakfast everywhere in the world, and it's so exciting that we have one of our first participants that's joining us from Australia. So I think our noise and our information is really crossing across the globe. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you could please keep your mics on mute, really appreciate that. If you can try and hold questions until the end of the session, you can type them into the chat box and you can raise your hand. The conversation that we'll have will last for about 40 minutes with Tony. Tony, if you could just wave so everyone knows who you are, thank you. And then we'll have about 15 minutes for questions. Please do take time to think about questions, and we'll do our best to answer them as succinctly as we can and as clearly as we can. So, like I said, get comfortable. The session's going to be on for an hour. Want to tell you a little bit about Hatch, and then we'll talk about the session. So I'm Yemisi, and I founded Hatch Ideas, and essentially to support people like yourselves who are in the business of making great cultural change or social impact initiatives and projects, just to help you to develop your businesses and your projects and your initiatives. Yeah, we do that through like training programs, mentoring, one-to-ones, networking events, and exchanges. So do get in touch with us after this session to find out more about how we can help you to develop your businesses, your initiatives, and your ideas. We work with people all over the world, and we also have a division called Hatch Africa, which is much more specifically suited to supporting people operating across the continent. So that's pretty much about us. We've got on the call who are with Hatch, Shao and Natalia, so you can also get to know them too. And so, yeah, let's get into it. I'm really happy and excited. I've been wanting to hold this session for so long now on how to win tenders. It's such an important opportunity for small businesses like yourselves to be able to benefit from the public purse and also the opportunities that the government pass out. I think in some countries, governments are the contracts account for a third of the actual business opportunities that you can get. So, you know, I'm really pleased that we are able to provide you with this information so that you can have an opportunity to be able to take advantage of those government opportunities. So we will have Tony. I'm going to be asking him a few questions, and he's going to give us some insights into the how to win into the tendering and contracting with government world. I'm going to ask you guys a few questions just to warm us up a bit. I hope it's going to work. We're going to do a poll, and just to find out a little bit about your experience and your understanding about tendering, and then I'm going to have a conversation with Tony so we can give you more insights, and then you will have an opportunity to ask questions. Oh, and this session is being recorded, so if you don't want your face to be seen, please keep your camera off, because we will be sharing this recording, and we will be taking edits and extracts from it to share with people publicly. Okay. So if you guys, I'm going to launch the poll. I think there's 4 questions, and let me know if you can see it. So I'd just like to find out from you guys, the first question, do you know how the government sells? Yes, no, or maybe? I think you just press the next question when you're ready. Can someone give me a thumbs up if the poll's working? Tony? Yeah. And do you just basically press next question?
Just scroll down.
Scroll down. Superb. You guys go for your lives. So then, yes, the next one is, what is the number 1 reason from this list that stops you from tendering more? Okay, so resource constraints, complexity of the process, lack of faith in the process, or poor return on investment. And what is the second reason that stops you from tendering more? those who have just started to join us, we're doing a poll. I hope that you can see it come up. We just wanted to get some insights into your understanding of tendering. So if you can't see the poll, please can you put a message in the chat box, and we'll probably try and send that to you afterwards. Okay, we've got a few more people to answer. I'm going to give it another, if you can rush. If you can't see the poll, please put it in the chat box so we know. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to give it 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The poll is ending. Cool. So, what is this? Share results. I've never done this before. This is very exciting. Okay, I didn't even know what this means. Sorry. Okay, let's crack on. So we've got our poll there so we can find a better understanding of where you are. Okay. So so do you know how the government sells? So we've got, so Tony, so that you're aware, the poll results, we've got 70% of the people on our call are said no, so we're all novice to that information. And then in terms of the number one reason that stops our participants from tendering more is a resource constraint. Sorry, is complexity of the process, followed by resource constraints. Okay, cool. Let's go into it. So Tony, if you could unmute yourself, please, be really great. I'd be really grateful if you could tell us all kind of like a little bit about your company, you know, who you are, what you do, and why you do it. Thanks so much.
Yeah, great. So thanks for having me on today. It's great to be here, and it's great to be talking to all of you innovative, creative companies. I used to work in software development, and for many years I was a software developer. And as happens to most people, as they get a little bit older and grayer, they stop you doing the thing that you like to do, and you end up having to sell. And for several years, I ended up having to write documents to sell to governments, to private companies, all sorts of people. And all of a sudden I found myself, instead of being a software developer, being a salesperson. And somewhere around the turn of the century, I set up my own company. And obviously then I was clearly a salesperson. I was starting out. I had no experience or expertise that I could put on a document that would give somebody the belief that I could do a job. So again, for a lot of small companies, or a lot of companies just starting up, you know, it's how do you get that initial credibility so that somebody will actually give you a chance to do some work. And as I was looking around to see where I could get work, I discovered government contracting. So government contracting is basically the process whereby governments buy all of the things that they need, and governments buy anything and everything pretty much. They buy aircraft carriers, they buy toilet paper, they buy knives and forks and food and chickens and silk ties. That is a thing that governments buy, silk ties, commemorative baseball hats. That's another thing they buy. And they also buy lots of advertising, marketing, and creative services, lots and lots. It's one of the top 4 things that they buy. And each year, governments around the world spend over $3 trillion buying whatever they need. And, you know, as much as 20% of that is in the creative services. It's marketing, it's advertising, it's developing websites, it's designing innovative pieces of collateral or pieces of content. So it's a huge opportunity. And I was thinking, well, how do I get into this opportunity? And the thing about governments is when they buy something and it's over a certain amount of value, they have to publish that information on public websites. So in the UK, for example, there's a website called contractsfinder.gov.uk. And on that are listed thousands and thousands of contracts for things that the government want to buy. And they exist all over the world, like across the globe. There's maybe 2,000 similar portals, and all of these have lots and lots of government opportunities. And the great thing about government contracts is they're all kind of the same. So one of the problems that you'll have in competing for contracts in the private sector is that everybody has their own idea as to what they want from you, how you're going to articulate your value proposition, and what sort of documentation they want from you. Some people, for example, will want to see 3 examples of your creative designs. Some of them will want to test you with a sample design for them, and others will want to see that you've 10 years experience working with companies just like them. It's all kind of different, but the thing about government contracting is it's all kind of the same. So if you can figure out where to find the opportunities, how to put the opportunities together, because they're all the same, you find that, pretty quickly you can figure out the formula and figure out the secret code that helps you become somebody who never wins any business to somebody who's winning business all the time. And I guess somewhere around, 2010, 2011, I figured out what the formula was. And I started writing lots of tenders for lots of different companies and winning lots of business. But the other thing, and just to point, I guess, to the results of the poll, it is complicated. It's also incredibly boring, and it is no fun. You can go to any dinner party or any grouping of people and tell them that you write tenders for a living, and they run away. They run very far away. So I thought, well, what would be more interesting? What would make me a more interesting person at parties? And technology that writes tenders is what would make you more interesting, because, and I guess that's really the problem that we're solving. For so many people, finding tenders is really hard, finding opportunities to compete, knowing how to compete is really hard, and the actual process of competing and writing the documentation, it's just not what you want to do. So I've dedicated the remainder of my working life to solving that problem and trying to come up with the magic button that will enable companies who are really good and really talented and really creative at what they do to win government business without having to engage as much as is necessary in the process, and just benefiting from being able to articulate their innovation and their creativity and their value for money and value proposition without having to deal with the complexity of the process. So it's an ongoing journey, and I'm here today to for therapy.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much. Can you guys hear me okay? Can you still hear me? Yeah? Okay, brilliant. Sorry. Thank you so much for that introduction, Tony. I just wanted to know kind of like, so in terms of like tendering, that's basically getting contracts from government through a process. But are there any other benefits to actually participating in the tendering process?
Yeah, well, the biggest benefit, I think, quite apart from the process of, the likelihood of winning business and actually gaining revenue from the government, is that when you participate in a process, the government is obliged to give you feedback on your market positioning. So when you compete for a piece of business, they're going to tell you whether your business is good or bad, whether it's value for money, and how it compares to the people that you are competing against all the time. So I often think of tendering, you might win revenue and win business from the government, but every time you compete, you're getting a checklist of all the things you need to fix in your business, and that's how you grow. And I guess part of the, the magic formula is as simple as every time they tell you you need to improve something in your business, go and improve that, compete again. And even if you're not competing for government contracts, you're still improving the capability of your business to deliver. You're improving the strength and resilience of your organization, and you're going to win other business. You're going to be a better company just by virtue of participating in government contracts.
Oh, that's really wonderful. That's really great. Thank you so much. And I guess what I'm thinking in my mind is, like, from your experience, what are like some of the key steps, towards successful tendering? Could you just give us a bit of an overview?
Yeah, the first one is, I suppose, to know who you're selling to and to know why they might buy from you. So one of the things that we would often do, for example, if you're a website designer, just as an example, if you're a website designer, where are you going to find the opportunities to develop websites for public organizations? First thing I would do is I would go onto the contractsfinder.gov.uk website, and I would do a search for website design. Simple as that. You can see all the open opportunities, the ones that you can compete for today, but you can also see all of the closed opportunities. So you can generate a list of all of the organizations in the UK, for example, and you can do this in every country in the world. Generate a list of all the organizations who have purchased website design services, but you can also see the ones that haven't. So you have two choices. You can, the other thing is on those websites, there's contact details for the people who are involved in purchasing website design services. So it's as simple as ringing them up and saying, this is what I do. Do you have a need for my services right now? And it's like any sort of sales process. 9 out of 10 times, they're going to tell you to go away. But 1 in 10 times, they're going to say, actually, I do have a need. And if it's below a certain threshold, if it's below, I think it's about £20,000, they don't have to go through any tendering process. They can make the purchase. They can just buy it, not on their credit card, but they can just buy it through a very accelerated process where you give them a quote. They have to get a couple of other quotes, and then you start doing the business. And that's really how you get started. You ask for the business. Don't start by looking on the portals to find opportunities to compete for. Go onto the portals to find the names and the contacts within organizations that might benefit from what you do. And you really would be amazed at, first of all, how much money is around and is there to be spent, and how often there's just nowhere to spend it because nobody's asking for the money. Like over the last year, there have been any number of organizations who've been asking for money for, PPE and face masks, and the process has been pretty trivial. It's the same for everything. You go to a public sector organization, and I know I've spoken to public sector buyers, and one of the things that they say is, it's terrible that nobody new ever comes to us. We're not getting the new thinking and the creativity and the new innovation. We're stuck with the same people competing for our business every time. And I would just love somebody to come in here, tell me something they could do for me, and I would happily give them £5,000 to go and make it happen, because £5,000 is nothing to my organization. And what I will get out of it is I'll get some piece of value, I'll get somebody's piece of intellectual capital, but I'll also get a new supplier, somebody that I can start working with over the longer term. And even in, my business, our very first contract, somebody asked me to do a small piece of work, and 17 years later, we were still working with that company. We couldn't get rid of them.
Fantastic. Superb. So I guess what you're saying is like, get in touch with buyers who might need your services and find out kind of what they need, develop that relationship. Yeah.
Yeah.
What I thought came into my mind actually, because we are referencing the UK, but we do have people joining us from all over the world. So is tendering the same? I mean,
it is. Yeah,
okay.
absolutely. What you'll actually find is, Commonwealth countries are probably the most professional when it comes to tendering. So you have somebody from Sydney here this morning. The Australians are probably the most professional in the world. So well done, Australia. The Canadians are also very good, but the process is largely speaking the same everywhere around the world. There's a portal, a public site where all the opportunities are presented, and you just go for those opportunities. You register on the website, you download the documentation, you answer the questions, and you submit your response.
Okay, and so I'm thinking, so can you apply for contracts from anywhere in the world, or can you only apply for contracts in your own country?
No, you can apply anywhere in the world. I mean, we have, some of the contracts that we would have worked on. We worked on a content management contract with an Irish person, a sole operator actually, and we won a contract with the United Nations in New York. As an example. Her husband wouldn't let her go.
That's
So those are the things that happen. But there's contracts all over the world, and increasingly, it is, it is a one planet approach. Buyers don't care where you come from; they care about what you can do for them, and it's all about experience and demonstrable experience and expertise, and being willing to do the work, being willing to put yourself out there and take a chance. It really is, it's hard to do, but it's as simple as that as well.
Fantastic, thank you. So I'm thinking to myself, kind of, what are some of the typical pain points, or common challenges that businesses experience when it comes to tendering?
So the first one is the documentation is it's standardized documentation, but it's like it's written by a solicitor or something. So to most people, it's unintelligible. And that's a big challenge. A typical tender document is maybe 70 pages. And 66 of those pages are full of terminology that you will struggle to ever understand. And 3 or 4 pages tell you what they're actually looking for and the answers they're looking for. So that's the biggest challenge, figuring out what the 4 pages you need to respond to are, and then making sure that the answers that you give are compliant with the requirements of the tender. So sometimes, for example, they will ask you to have a level of insurance or a turnover or a certain number of reference examples of your work or of clients that you've worked with, and making sure that you tick those boxes is the hard bit to do, I think, because it's easy to miss a box, and if you miss a box, then you're disqualified from the competition. But it is the kind of thing that because all tenders are the same, once you figure out the 4 pages that you need to read each time, then it becomes a very quick thing to do, because you know what to ignore and you know what to focus on, and because you've done it so many times in the past, you can reuse the material time and time again. So I would say the first tender that you might write, or the first proposal you might write, might take you 5 or 6 days to do. 2 or 3 proposals later, it's taking you a half a day to a day to do exactly the same thing, but you've got all the material already written. The questions are always the same, nearly always the same. So you're kind of building a machine to generate new business for yourself.
I see what you mean. So there'll be like standardized questions that you can pretty much cut and paste in, and then the time you're spending is more on the creative response to the solution. Because I know that many of the people on the call are from the creative industries, and from my experience, buyers will be looking for some real innovative ideas, but at least that shortcut, I guess, will give more time to come up with some really special solutions.
Yeah, exactly. And it is that differentiation that buyers are looking for. Especially I think in the creative sector, because I think the challenge I think that anybody has in the creative sector is that most buyers are kind of frustrated creatives in and of themselves. And the number of times that I've been involved in tender evaluations where people are looking at designs and going, oh, I don't really like the blue in that. Well, how qualified are you to decide whether blue is good, bad, or indifferent? So you always have that, I suppose, as a challenge, but I think people always respond well to creativity and to something that's different to what they expected. And what you do find is that people who are involved already in this is where I think there's a great opportunity for new companies to get involved in tendering. The companies that are already involved are no longer creative. They're no longer innovative. They're going to do an iteration of whatever they did the last time. So they're kind of constrained by the contract they have and the relationship they have, and the difficulty in moving too far from what they've been previously successful at. But when we look at what actually happens in contracting, 3 out of 4 contracts are awarded to a new company each time it comes out, to the surprise of the people that had the contract. But the reason is because the new companies are offering something different. And it's the kind of different that it's difficult to do if you're already part of an organization and working with them already. So it's a huge opportunity for new companies who, I guess, have untested creative ideas to apply to new market segments. And, I mean, no government has ever been accused of being, flamboyantly creative and innovative. So clearly there's still an opportunity that is untapped to be
Yeah.
exploited.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I actually wanted to go back a little bit and just to give everybody, because we've got some people that just joined us, but if we could just talk a little bit more to your platform, Orbidal, because I really, I don't think you can stress enough how clearly you've been able to set out the tendering process through this online platform. But if you could just kind of like walk people through it, just narratively, what the experiences on the site, what the benefits are, and kind of like how it works, I'd be really grateful.
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned at the start, like every country in the world has its own way of publishing the buying requirements that its government has. And it can be, it's quite tedious to, log into the Contracts Finder website and have a look, and log into the oztenders.gov website to see how that looks, and so forth, all around the world. So we've built a platform that captures all of that information from hundreds of sources around the world, and it just presents it to you in a single format and shape. So once you have that single format and shape, it's just like that. Like those tenders are coming from all over the world. So there's ones from Ireland and from the US and from all around Europe. So once you see all those opportunities in one place, then you can go into each of them. If you just click on the Discover button there
Mhm.
and just pick any one of them, you can just pick the first one there maybe. You'll see on the left-hand side there's a process, and these are essentially the 8 steps. So it's registering your interest in the opportunity, it's getting the documentation, it's looking at so we've a tool called Opportunity Insights, where we look at the buyer's past history just to see the type of company that they award contracts to. Because if you find that you're looking at an opportunity, but the companies that they're awarding the contracts to are ones that you've heard of because they're international brand names, well, then maybe they're not going to pick you. So you're kind of looking for opportunities where you don't know the names of anyone that they've worked with in the past, or where they've shown a great willingness to award contracts to smaller companies. There's a bid no bid tool, and that's essentially where you assess your capability to actually win a contract. So it's comparing your business to the requirements of the specification. And as you go down through the other steps, it's really, and I suppose where we come in, it's about providing you with guidance along the way, so that if you need to get a document, we'll show you where to get it. If you need to assess your capability to win it, or what you're missing and what you need to improve on, we can show you how to do that. As you write the proposal, we evaluate and score it for you, so that you can see where you're going to fall down, and do something about fixing it before you actually submit it. And one of the big things that we do to speed up the process, if you can click on the left-hand side there, just above that one, down to one more, So in here, we've essentially written lots and lots of content, which is typical to tender competitions. So, you might be working on, designing, responsive websites, and you may or may not have a policy around the EU cookies directive, for example, one that I can see there, or how can you ensure confidentiality and security of data, which is part of the GDPR guidelines. So a lot of the questions that surround the tendering process and surround the core expertise that you have, we've answered, and we just make those available to all of our customers, so that they're not going to spend time trying to figure out answers to common questions, which essentially are, you either do it or you don't do it. And then you can spend more of your time working on coming up with creative solutions and coming up with differentiation and ideas that are really going to separate you from everybody else. All of the content that we have in here is content that everybody should have. And again, back to, I guess, our mission, it's about enabling companies to have a common baseline of standard documentation and standard answers to standard questions, so that all you're really assessing in a tender competition is whether this company is the type of company that is going to deliver the creativity and the innovation that I, as a buyer, are looking for.
That is so wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us and walking us through some of the platforms. I mean, I'm very much part of the tendering. That's how we get our contracts, and I'm ever so grateful to you to being able to make sure that we can have all the insights and the support that we need to be better at and more successful in winning those government contracts. So I kind of have like another question, which is like, it's like basically the final question, really, before I'll invite everybody to ask questions. So guys, if you could get your questions ready, you can drop them in the chat or you can put your hand up. But I just would be really grateful if you could kind of like give us sort of like maybe 3 top tips towards successful tendering.
So I think first tip would be to know who your market is, know what who the buyers for your particular service are. That's the first thing. The second thing is to get to know them and get them to know you. So it's to make contact with them. So a couple of ways you can do that are by ringing them, by emailing them, by following them on social media, or by, if you're running an event, inviting them to speak to an event. There's very few people who will turn down an opportunity to wax lyrical about how brilliant they are, like me today, that these sort of opportunities. But public sector buyers, these are very important. External engagement is very important to them, and any opportunity to engage externally and improve their own knowledge of the industry is something that is really valuable to them. And the third thing is to start getting your content in order. And the 2 most important pieces of content to get started with are your CVs, because people buy people, and they want to buy the people with the expertise they have to solve the problems that they have. And your experience, your case studies. So having 2 or 3 reference clients that you can talk about, tell the story of how you solved a problem for them. Getting those 2 things together, they're actually the hardest parts to do, because people are generally reluctant to talk about how great they are. But you're all in creative businesses. You've all taken something of a risk to get to the place in life that you are today. So it's important to, I think, be a little bit vocal about how good you are. And just remember, in the world of tendering, that's what everybody is doing. You don't get any marks for telling people that you are average or you just did a job, because there's always going to be somebody who says, I did the best job that could have been done in this particular case, and that should be you. And the same with your case studies. Showcase the great work that you've done, and even if it's a tiny job, there's so much that goes into it, and so much that goes into it that's not just the creativity, it's the governance and being able to relate to people, being able to manage different people with differing views, making sure that people get paid on time, making sure that there's overall satisfaction, and checking that there's overall satisfaction. There's so much more that goes into making somebody a successful engagement than simply just doing the job. So make sure you talk about that, because those are all the things that are really important to public sector buyers. And I guess the one little nugget I would leave you with is, when you're competing for a contract, the assumption on the part of the buyer is that you can actually do the job. Like, you will have very few plumbers, coming up offering to do website design or offering to develop a brochure. That just doesn't happen. So what they will assume that you can do the job, and really what they're trying to understand when you engage with them is whether you can do the job for them.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Tony. we're starting to get questions in. So we've got a question from Gina, which is, can sole traders tender for work as opposed to limited companies?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that example I gave just a moment ago, that was a sole trader who won the contract with the UN, New York. So absolutely no problem at all. And actually, if I was to look at the tendering landscape, a lot of the, the big profile contracts that people hear about, are big companies with thousands of employees. But the vast majority of the money that governments spend is with sole traders. It's contracts, in the £5,000 to £10,000 range. That's the vast majority of money that government spent. And I would say, I can't remember what it is that's spent in the UK on government contracting, but like 3.2 trillion around the world. Of that 3.2 trillion, about 60% of it is spent in £5,000 and £10,000 increments with sole traders.
That's really interesting, actually. That's really interesting to know. So yeah, please, if anyone's got any other questions, this is your opportunity to ask them now. You can drop them in the chat, or if you can raise your hands. Tony, while we're waiting for people to have a think, I think people are probably digesting. But oh yeah, if there's anything that didn't come across clearly or you want us to cover again, please do ask. But Tony, is there anything else that you think is important that you'd like to share during this information session on tendering?
Yeah, I think, one thing I'd probably just try to, reiterate or, more forcefully articulate is that the one thing that I see stopping sole traders and small businesses from being successful in competing for business is that they're not willing to back themselves to be successful. We're running a large program in Lithuania at the moment, and the one thing that stops companies from being successful is they don't feel that they're good enough to compete internationally. But when we look at the data sets and when we look at our experiences with buyers, that just isn't true. The companies that win contracts are very often the only ones that compete for contracts. So I think, being ambitious and backing yourself to be successful is exactly how you're going to be successful. If you've decided tendering isn't for you and you're not ever going to win tenders, well then you're right. You are not going to win tenders. But backing yourself, and one other little, I suppose, interesting sort of nugget is 1 in 10 tenders doesn't get any response at all. So $300 billion every year nobody competes for. The tender is advertised and nobody competes for it. And very often the reason nobody competes for it is because everybody says, I'd never win that. I just wouldn't be good enough for that. And everybody says that. And, the governments can't make the purchase and they're so anxious to make the purchase.
That's amazing. So I guess have a go, be confident. It is your business, and you do want to share your services and your skills to the world. Have that confidence to go for those tenders. So we've got another 2 questions, I think. Hold on a minute. So we've got a question from Lorraine, where she asks, is there a formula for writing case studies? She was asked to write one and had no idea what they were actually asking.
Yes, there is a formula, and I'd be happy to share it with you if you want to see the template.
Oh, thank you, Tony.
I can send that on to you later. But essentially, there's 5 parts to a winning case study. The first part is, and these are the headings, if you like. The first one is context or background to the piece of work that you did. The second is the challenge or opportunity that you were asked to solve. And that's really important because that's where you're setting yourself up to demonstrate how great you are. So what is it that the buyer was really looking for, and talking really about the pain that they were suffering rather than the practical need that they articulated. The third part then is your approach. So how did you approach the problem? And again, that's where you really should be a little bit insightful. and, you know, talk a little bit about the customer's context and your experience in solving similar problems, and how you're going to go about this one. Now, those first three headings there, most people when they're writing case studies, they don't include any of those, which is terrible, because where they do start is with the implementation, which is the fourth heading, which is what you actually did. But just remember what I said just a moment ago. Buyers will always assume that you can actually do the work. That's not really the concern for them. The concern for them is, what's your approach, and is it going to work for them? So if you don't put in an approach section, then you're just telling them you can do the work, but, you know, whether you can do it good, bad, or indifferently, they don't know. So, and then the last bit is what the outcome was. And again, that's the last heading, and it's really important. Having done the work, well, what happened? Was it good, bad, received well, or not? And that's the same, actually, just to extend it to CVs, because for CVs, people will often describe their roles and responsibilities in a particular job, but never whether they were actually any good at it. You know, so my job was to open the store at, you know, 8 a.m. every day. That's what people write in a CV, but whether you actually did that because you're watching Netflix all night, people don't give you they don't prove that they did it. So that's, I think, so that's the formula, and I'll be happy to, you know, we have a little template that we make available that shows exactly how to write that. And the last thing I'd say is, when you're writing a case study, really what the buyer is looking for is that their case study reflects what they're looking for. So I would normally put in, you know, some lines like, similar to the requirement of you, this customer needed whatever it was.
Fantastic. That is incredible. Thank you so much, Tony. And thank you for offering the template. We'll share it with participants after the session. Thank you so much for that. We've got another question from Bemisola, and she's asking them, okay, so what is your experience of the UK tendering system, given all the controversy with the government's PPE contract scandal and favouritism? Thank you for that question. Nepotism.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there is actually a UK business called opentender.eu that ranks all of the countries in Europe in terms of the levels of corruption. The UK would fare pretty well. And if you just think, you know, there has been some scandal, like, it's not even just the PPE, there was the security contracts around the Olympics a few years ago. There's always some level of scandal with the UK government. It doesn't matter which one it is, but there's also some level, I guess, of nepotism with some contracting. But I would say that, in my experience, you know, it's less than 0.001% of all the contracts and all the money that's being spent. And the problem, I guess, that, you know, the UK often has is that, you know, it often tends to be ministers that are involved in whatever the scandal is, so it becomes very newsworthy. But by and large, most public sector buyers, they don't care, I guess, enough to you know, for favoritism or a scandal. I have seen contracts where, you know, somebody would have had the contract for maybe 10 or 15 years. There's a tender competition and they lose, and nobody cares and nobody is sorry for them. We even had one where we evaluated a tender, and the incumbent had the contract for 17 years, and one of the evaluation team was godfather to his child. Ooh. He lost the contract and nobody cared. It was a bit awkward, but, you know, people are looking for value, and, you know, really the best, there's probably another layer of complexity there, but by and large, the best proposals tend to win.
Okay. Amazing. Thank you so much for that. And thank you, everybody, for your questions. Let's see. Okay, have we got any more questions? Oh, okay, we've got another one from Bemi Solar again. So she says, thank you, Tony. And could you tell us a little bit more about the services you offer? Do you help organizations submit contracts?
Yeah, we do. So, primarily we have a technology platform which people will use to manage the tender process for themselves. So it'll find opportunities for you. It'll help you run through a process. There's content there which you can use to compile proposals. And generally, as part of, people signing up to that, we help them get their first few proposals under their belts so that they understand the process and they know how to go forth and be successful. And remembering, of course, that there's so much similarity. Once you've done one tender, you'll find the second tender is 95% the same, and so on and so on and so on. But we do help organizations submit contracts, and in any given week we're probably helping 30 or 40 companies write proposals, which again, it's quite a lot, but we can do it efficiently because we're using and reusing content as well, because I hate writing proposals as much as anyone else. So the quicker and the more effectively we can do it, the better. And the more time that we can give organizations then to think about how they can differentiate themselves. And I guess that's where we love really working. It's helping companies be better than everybody else that's competing for a contract. And writing the document is just one part of it. It is knowing who you're competing against, knowing what their pricing model is, and knowing what it is that you are truly really good at your heart, the thing that made you set up your business and the thing that makes you believe every morning that you can do a better job than other people who are out there competing for the same business as you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Tony. And it actually, I think, I don't think there's any more questions, but that question actually leads me on to providing everyone with information about the workshops that we're going to be delivering in collaboration with Orbidal. I'm going to put the information in the chat box and we'll send it to you. So in order to really give you the skills to be able to win those tenders, we've pulled together a series of 3 one-hour workshop sessions. They are at cost, they're £35 each. So we've made them as affordable as we can do so that you guys can have access to enhancing your skills. So here's the link to the first one, how to qualify for government contracting opportunities. If you're able to take grab that so that you can take a link and go straight to Eventbrite in order to book yourself onto the workshop. Then the other one that we're offering is where to find government contracting opportunities. These are the key skills that we want you to develop, and I'm sure the insights and information that you want for yourselves. And then the final workshop is here, how to write a winning tendering bid or proposal. So please do have a look at those links. You can get in touch with us for any questions. There's a little synopsis of each workshop in there. Tony will be delivering them. There'll be 1 hour each, and they'll be for £35. And we'll be also offering some resources and added information to really help you on your way. So I just wanted to, I think, come to a close because we might be able to get off a little bit earlier, stretch our legs, because as we close this session comes to a close earlier than we had advertised. So thank you again, Tony, so much for providing us information about winning government contracts. If there's anything else that you wanted to add, please, if there's any other resources, please just let us know, as we'll share them with everybody else. So I think I'd be grateful if everyone could show their appreciation to Tony's session. You can always do the clap hands emoji. If you have any other questions, please feel free to ask us. Thank you so much,
Thank
Gina.
you.
Oh, superb.
Just one last thing. Sorry. Thank you so much, Tony, for that.
Yes.
Really
Who's
insightful.
that? Who have we got on the? Is that Bemi Solar again?
Yeah,
Hi,
it's Bemi Solar. Hi, Tony.
Hi,
Yemisi. Just wanted to quickly ask, before we, you the works that you're doing, before we find out if it's something that we can, it's going to be useful for us. Is that, like you said, in the contracts finder, is that the only place you can go to see if there's any kind of contracts that's relevant to your industry or relevant to what you do? so we know if it's actually of use to us in terms of the workshops that you'll be doing.
Yeah, well,
That's a great.
the first workshop actually is going to cover a lot of that, because I think the first workshop is really about, well, how do you qualify for government contracting opportunities? And it's about figuring out whether you actually, first of all, have something that governments are willing to pay for. And secondly, what the level of competition might be in that sector, and how good do you need to be, or how much, do you need to invest, or what sort of shape of company do you need to be? And it's really, I guess, about finding a market fit for your business. So what I can say is, governments spend money, in all sorts of manner. Some of it is publicly advertised, but much of it, like half of it, is not publicly advertised. It is very much, knocking on the door of the local, council offices and looking for business, or contacting your local representative and asking them to put you in touch with the right person. So, but what we'll talk about in that first workshop are the strategies which you can use to determine whether government contracting is worth your while at all, whether there really is a market there, and if so, well then how you can tackle that market, and how you can get a foothold, and how you can grow from there then.
Oh, that's wonderful. Actually, can we take an opportunity, if we could just go through each workshop just really quickly, please, just to give a little insight overview of what the learning experience would be. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think at the end of the first workshop, you would know how to qualify government contracts, and how you can qualify your own business to know whether you can compete. So we call it, are you capable of winning, and are the contracts winnable? So those are the two things that we're looking for. So that's the first workshop, and after that you'll know if it's a good revenue stream for you. And I would be surprised, certainly in the creative industries, if it wasn't. The second one then is where you find government contracting opportunities, and some of them, of course, are publicly advertised, and we'll show you some of those. But then other times it's about, being, the strategies that we would employ to engage with governments to create opportunities for yourself. I mean, public sector buyers aren't any, they're not more enthusiastic about their jobs than anyone else. Very often they're sitting there with things that need doing and nobody to do them, but no motivation to go and sort it out. So somebody knocking on their door, fixing problems for them, that's really what they're looking for. So we'll talk about how you can engage on multiple levels with governments to gain contracts from them. And then the last workshop, how to write a winning tender, or how a bid proposal. That's where we will go through some of the assets we have, for example, the case study template, the CV template, and some of the other core elements of a tender. And we will explain not just how you put those together, but the difference between an average submission and a winning submission. And it's the difference between a good book and a bad book, and what is it in the world of tendering and evaluation that really makes a difference. And that's the third workshop. And with those, if you were to go to all of those, you would know more than just about how to qualify, find, and compete for government contracts. These are, I guess, business skills that will apply, right across any piece of business that you are trying to gain for your companies going forward.
Superb. Thank you so much, Tony, for that. That was amazing. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us for this Hatch Ideas business session. We'll be hosting more sessions, so please do make sure that you are following us across the socials and you are on our mailing list so that you can get the information directly. We will send the case study top tips or outline to you so that you can be able to develop and produce and create the most compelling case study examples. So thank you again so much for joining us. I hope you'll be able to join us for our next sessions. Please do register for the workshops. They will transform your businesses, and we really want to be there to help you to be able to sustain what you're doing, grow your businesses, and get those government contracts, because the opportunities are there waiting for you. Okay, so thank you very much again to everyone. Bye-bye. Tony, thank you for joining us. Okay, bye everyone.